Okay, so being the first session, we will try to understand how exactly, I mean, like basically from the warehouse or the management or from any of the modules, whatever we are trying to look out for that, we will try to make it like what is the basic settings that we would be looking after for this. Okay, hello. All right. So everyone is able to see the my screen, right? Hello.
Yes, yes, we are able to see you.
Okay, fine. So now let's try to have a kind of an overview. So basically, as we have already discussed in our previous in the demo session, that we are trying to have a logistics providing solution, which is for your warehousing indeed, where we would like to have an end-to-end visibility of your warehouse. Okay, so that's where we are trying to have this solution, which is with extended warehouse management. Okay, where we are trying to have, it's as simple as that, we're only trying to keep the track of your products. Okay, that's the first most thing. When you're trying to keep a track of your finished or any of your products, how do you map these systems? Okay, because ideally whenever we are trying to make these kind of systems available for the customer, yes indeed they would also end up having their legacy systems also. Means legacy could be many things, like it's generally we can have our SAP ERP systems. Okay, or we can also have the S4 system which is already existing with the customer, or we can have the non-ERP systems also. Okay, we can call it as any other things like whatever the names, non-ERP systems, where we need to integrate, okay, the EWM functionality to this existing business. Or maybe at the beginning of your a project, or maybe when you're trying to implement a whole package like for all other things, then we can also have this one indeed coming up. However, when we are trying to integrate it, ideally we always need to remember that we are integrating with two systems. Okay, so what are those two systems indeed here? One would be your S4 ERP. Okay, one is your S4 ERP system. Okay, S4 ERP or a normal SAP ECC system, anything. Okay, and the second one would be your SAP EWM system. Okay, so whether it could be the embedded version or the decentralized version. So it could be any of these two versions we would be integrating with the standard SAP systems, because it is a product of an SAP. So now when we are trying to integrate, why do you need to integrate it? Because still the major important thing that we always need to understand here, still the EWM, if it is a decentralized one, like in case of a decentralized landscape, okay, we would be having your SAP ERP on one system, and then we will have SAP EWM system. So we would be having two different landscapes here. Okay, if in case if you would like to have an embedded landscape, okay, embedded landscape. So what could be the options here? We would be having both S4 ERP followed by your EWM or followed by any of the advanced functionalities. It would be in only one landscape. Okay, we do not need to have a two different landscapes for this. This is a kind of an embedded landscape. Okay, this is one way of, and there could be another chance also where your embedded landscape, okay, means you will be using your S4 ERP for your system. However, For the EWM, you would be integrating this to your decentralized one, means you would be using your decentralized landscape, and like which is of a 9.6 version or anything. And then we will have our S4 ERP and the decentralized landscape also getting integrated. So these are the possible available landscapes that we generally maintain it. Okay. So decentralized landscape in the sense like the client, whoever it is, it's already in the ERP from a long time, like they are using it 6.0 version or anything. And now because of the business expansion and other stuff, they would like to implement an EWM solution for them, so they can have an S4 EWM or a decentralized EWM. So the options are wide open here. Why? Because it depends upon the complexity of your business. Basically that will help to decide what kind of a EWM that we need to have it as a landscape. So now in this particular SAP EWM one, what are we trying to do here? We might integrate with 9.6, which is a decentralized one, or we might go with an S4 EWM one. That is one of the option. And there is an other option available now these days, is because SAP is pushing every customer to move to an S4 landscapes. That's the reason where you do not need to have a two different systems here. Indeed, we would be having everything in one single system where your S4 ERP, all your core modules, and also your EWM and followed by your team, everything will come under one landscape. Okay. So this is one other option. And now this is another version of an embedded landscape also, where we will have the client, existing client is already using an S4 ERP, and he wants to go for the warehousing solution. And when he wants to go with the warehousing solution, he can make use of the existing EWM, which is of a basic or maybe an advanced. He can make use of that. If not, because of the business volume of that particular warehousing, he might opt for a decentralized, okay, landscape where it would be integrating with the 9.6 version, which was this one, which I was talking in the first beginning. So in the real world, it could be any of these cases that could be applicable depending upon the customer requirements. However, when we are talking about the integration, because it's being an SAP system, the integration would be much more easier for us. Like it could be with a standard tools, whatever we have it, we will try to make use of that. Both in case of the embedded on the in all the scenarios. Maybe there could be another scenario also. Okay, maybe what happens? It's integrating to your non-legacy systems. Okay, means what happens here? We will be having a non-SAP ERP system. It's not even any of the SAP systems. It's a non-SAP system. Okay, where they have all kind of a plannings will be done, but these systems they would like to integrate to the SAP EWM systems. Okay, this is also one of the landscape which are also available and where we have implemented for some of the clients like this, where we will directly integrate this standalone EWM system to the non-SAP systems also. So currently, these are one of the landscapes that you might come across once you step into any of your projects or something, because most of the cases you would be only seeing these kind of scenarios only in terms of the landscape. I hope that's clear to everyone. Now, because I have to switch it between, but I'm not sure. uh, Okay. Okay, I'll not be able to going through the questions at this moment because I have to switch between this. Okay, fine. Now, when we talk, because now the current training, whatever we are discussing, it is mostly we would be looking into this particular version. Okay, the embedded landscape, which is of the S4 ERP, of the EWM and TM and all the other things. Okay, which is of the version where we will be looking into the 2020 landscape. Okay, this is the latest one. FPS02 is the version again. So that is the latest one which we would be looking after in this particular scenario. And I'll try to even compare what could be the significance. I mean, like what kind of the things that you might get in order to have, and what is the differences between this. All right. So when I start looking into these ones, how here as well, like how we are integrating, because it's not the standard way that as soon as we make some kind of piece of a configurations or anything that available in the ERP landscape, okay, I mean like in the S4 ERP systems, that needs to be reflected in some of the cases to the EWM. But how do we have to do it? Though here the one thing, though it is part of an embedded one, still the S4 ERP, okay, and the EWM, whatever we are talking here, should be integrated again, okay, though it is a part of the internal systems, okay. So though it is a part of an internal systems, we still should be aware of how this needs to be integrated. Ideally, this activity would be performed by the basis guys, okay, in the real time, not by us, but it is a better understanding if we know what kind of a settings and how the landscape settings would be taken care here. Okay. So, but prior to that, what exactly would be looking? So this is where the system, I'm just logging in here. Yep. So in this particular one here, if you can see that in the earlier versions, like in your any of your core ERP versions, you would not be seeing these functionalities like below the logistics execution. You would not be seeing this yard logistics, or maybe your extended warehouse management or your transportation management would never be available. So this has come to available only from the S4 landscape. I mean, like from 1510, I mean, like from 1610, we have this EWM followed by the TM and other stuff. Okay. So now this extended warehouse management, whatever we were using it, this needs to be integrated back to the core ERP system, whatever we are doing it. Okay. Now for that, we need to have a certain steps, and as well as like some kind of steps that we need to follow every time to make sure that we are making use of this one. Okay. So now when I'm talking about this particular integration, so what are the factors that we need to consider here? Okay, so the factors in the sense, what are those? For example, so these settings, whatever I'm referring to, it is indeed the same. I mean, like it is indeed common for everything, even when it is a decentralized landscape, or even if it is for an embedded landscape. For both the things, that is pretty much common. Okay, we in order to have the configuration remains the same. So now, in order to integrate this both ERP system, whatever we are discussing, and the EWM system, okay, there are standard best practices available in the help.sap.com how the connections between both the systems needs to happen. However, there are certain steps like of maybe a 10 to 15, I can say that roughly, that these are the prerequisites that you need to check it, or maybe you have to verify it from your basis team that they have performed these kind of an activities. Okay, so what are those certain steps that we would like to have it? Okay, now first thing, okay, we can check, okay, what is the ERP system. Means what is our ERP system? Means our core ERP modules, where you will have your all certain modules like your MM, or maybe, okay, which is your procurement, or your order to cash, okay, which is the OTC one, and demand to supply the DTS one, like your production integration or your qualities, all these things. Now that needs to be integrated to the standard, the warehousing solution. I mean, like which is of the EWM part of the S4. Now, in order to have this particular piece of integration to happen here, we have to check the connections, like what kind of a connections, like there are something like cross client settings and client dependent settings, and there are also a warehouse integration settings. So all these kind of settings would be required. Okay, however, if you would like to have, as I said, there is a best practice also available in the market to make these connections available. That is nothing but the integration. I'll try to share this document also. Integration of SAP, ERP, WM and something. I'll have, I think I don't remember it. ERP and EWM. Okay. This is a standard best practice solution manager document which you would be available. Okay. Where it will tell you all sort of documents. Okay. But however, I'll try to share it probably with you guys. So no need to worry on that. Now, so as I was talking about this integration part, what kind of an integration that we would be looking after here from the system perspective. Now, however, we also need to have a certain things needs to be uh, clarified here. That is something where I'll try to come be after this, maybe in tomorrow's session or something. I'll try to make it clear what is this and all, and how do you want to maintain that. Okay, so the very first thing, okay, what are the settings that we would require as part of our EWM system on the ERP system to make sure that this needs to be integrated? Okay, like very first thing is what we try to do here. Like as we are telling that ERP, S4 ERP as one system and our SAP EWM as a different system, right? So means we are trying to communicate a certain data. Like here, what kind of a data we generally try to communicate between both the systems? The very first thing would be certainly something of your master data. Like what is a master data again? Means we would try to have like your material masters, okay? And you would like to have your product masters, okay? I'm sorry, a material which is nothing but a product master on the EWM, okay? You'll have your business partners, okay, and you might have your other stuff like whatever it is, like carriers, all kind of the master data, whatever you required, that is something which you need to transfer it. However, because we are talking it as an S4 embedded landscape, we do not need to transfer all the data in the earlier landscapes here, okay. Maybe I also shown that in part of my demo. Okay. In the decentralized landscape, when we are transferring certain master data, okay, that whatever has been created in your ERP systems, okay, that everything needs to transfer to your EWM system using a code interface model. However, as being a part of our embedded landscape, that is one of the advantage what we have, that we do not need to transfer all your master data to your warehousing solution, because it is in the one landscape. You can keep it all the master data as a centralized one, and you can make use of that master data to your warehouses also. Okay. And the second thing, what else we required? Transactional data. Means what kind of a transactional data that we require? We would be requiring certain deliveries, like it could be an inbound when you're receiving something, or it could be your outbound if you are selling out from your warehouse, and it could be your production integration, like a production process orders, okay, or maybe you would like to have some kind of a delivery changes, delivery posting changes. So all these kind of the things that falls under your transactional data. Means If I create some certain data in my S4 ERP system using some methodology or whatever it is in the backend, okay, from the standard point of view, that it has to transfer to my EWM system. How do that gets transferred now? That is what that we have to discuss now, because when we are sending certain data from one system to another system, how exactly this would be transferring it, and what are the things that we need to know? Because when we are talking about in the embedded one, so these are the two things that we need to always remember that. Okay. All right. I hope this is pretty much covered. Okay. I'm gonna clear. Now, what is a certain things that we would be required here? I mean, like, as I said, what kind of a configurations like the QRFCs, okay, means in this particular one, in most of the settings, like whatever we are trying to do, how the applications, whatever we have designed, communicating, here we will communicate everything through something called as an RFCs. Okay, just remember that we will always communicate something called as an RFC, which we will call it as a remote function call. Okay, this is something where we would be using it indeed. So these RFCs can be used to start an application remotely or to execute any kind of a things by doing it. However, this is something where we would be defining the RFCs as other stuff from each systems to communicate smoothly. Okay. Now, there are certain transactions, like as I said, that to have this data to flow from one system to another systems, okay, we would like to have sorry, okay, firstly we need to understand how this is getting flowed. So there are certain settings for the both for your core interface and as well as for your QRFC to be triggered. That is what we are trying to have it. What we will try to have, the very first point we will try to have, or maybe we'll create some logical systems. However, please remember that these are pretty much the activity will be performed by the basis guys. That is not something where we need to do it in the real time. Okay, we will first create something called as logical systems in both ERP and as well as in the EWM systems, and we will assign the client to the logical systems. Okay, and then we will assign a kind of, or maybe we will create an RFC destinations here. Okay, RFC destinations for the EWM systems. Okay, and once we've defined it, we will try to have some kind of a method calls or the BAPI calls that we would be creating, and we would be assigning it here. Once we have done this particular piece of activity, yes, we will also need to perform a certain kind of an organizational structure and other things, okay, which I'll try to tell you that, okay, what are the things that we have to maintain and other things. Now, let me just come down. Once we have this SPRO node, like if you can see that, IMG, here we can see that integration with other SAP components, and you can see that it has been integrated to multiple systems here, but out of that we would be requiring only this one, which is of an extended warehouse management. Okay, now when we are trying to use this warehouse management, you can see there are multiple nodes available below this: basic settings for the system landscape, and basic settings for your data transfer, and for the EWM linkage and other stuff. Okay, now firstly we will try to have the system landscape. Now you can see this. This is what I was trying to say. Name a logical system. So what is this logical systems? Now, whenever we are using a certain data getting transferred, the system uses the logical systems. Okay, I mean like either of the system, whatever. If you are sending some information from your S4 ERP to your S4 EWM system, the basic thing is it will try to make use of this particular logical system to identify the sender and as well as the receiver. So for example, if you would like to communicate to me, so you're calling me as Shri, and maybe if I want to communicate to some XYZ person called Madhu, so I'll call him as Madhu. So for that, so when we try to communicate to each other, we can be identified with a certain names like Shri and Madhu. So Sacho, what happens whenever there is some kind of a communication is transferred, we will communicate each other with the respective names. The same way, when we are trying to perform a certain activities, I mean like certain data transfers between two different systems, we will initially try to have something called as a logical system. That is what we are trying to have it. Name logical system here. Okay, the very first thing. So as I said, it is used for the kind of a data transfers. Okay, so however, this you do not need to perform any kind of settings here. This has already been configured and you don't try to change the settings or delete the settings. Please try to make use of that. Now you can see this. It is ES1 CLNT 400. Now if you see that, this is what the system has been defined. However, how does, because there is some certain standard naming convention for the basis team that they would be creating it. Now you see this ES1 CLNT 400 means 400 is your instance number. Like when you try to log on to your pad, when you see this here, your 400 is your client number, right? So on top of it, and how you are defining the system. So here we have defined the system in such a way that it is defining with ES1. That's, I mean, like it could be anything, it could be CH1 or whatever it is. Normally when it is a client specific one, we will try to have a client starting one and then we will do it. So ES1 CLNT 400. Now this is where we have defined a certain client here. Name logical systems means for the ERP1 we have something called as ES1 CLNT 400. Now, assigning the clients to the logical systems here. So, what does this mean? Means here, once we get into this one. So, what is our client number? It is 400. Don't try to change the settings. It is all pre-configured. Please leave it as it is. We will assign the logical system name, whatever we have defined earlier. ES1 CLNT 400, whatever we have defined, that would be putting it here and it is assigned to the client of a 400 here. So assigning the clients, that is what we have. Assigning the clients to the logical systems means the 400 client, okay, has been assigned to our logical system of this one, ES1 CLNT 400. This is what we have defined. Now, yeah, we do have something called as an APO release. So this is something what happens here. Uh, sorry. So this is a kind of an EWM version. So SAP has released, maybe what I can say there is, it has released multiple versions of the EWM software. So in this menu, what we try to do is we try to assign the appropriate relay, the version, whatever we have it here. Okay, that we would be assigning it here. So this is a kind of a technical requirement for the data transfer. So this is a cross-client settings, guys. Okay, changes made in one client will apply to all the clients in that particular system. Okay, so whatever the version we are assigning it for the EWM one, that's a standard thing that we try to assign it over here. Okay, with the EWM client and other stuff. That is what we are doing it in the specified APO release. So this is something which we are discussing now. There is something called as a data transfer RFC connections. So here, when we see this, there is something as a setup RFC destination. Means RFC destination to which system we are trying to do that. Here, when we click on this particular one, specify, I'm sorry, this is a previous node. Yep. So now this is a kind of an RFC connection. Go to this ABAP connection. So the transaction is something where you can also maintain it like BD SM59, the transaction for this, if you can see this. SM59, the same way we will also get through the menu path, what we are seeing it here. Okay. So I'm just closing this one of the node. Now, in this particular one, to which system you have to connect it? Means you have to connect it from your ERP system to your EWM system. So this is your client, EWM CLNT 400. Okay. So double click on this and then click on the certain connection test here. So that what happens, the system try to tell you that the transfer is happening like for every 4 milliseconds or something. That is something where you can do that. So this is how the RFC settings connections would be set up. But ideally, this is completely a basis activity. You do not need to worry on that. Okay. In case if you need to give your host and everything, your instance number and everything, that you would be giving it, and then we would be going on. So and then we also click on this remote logon. I mean, because it is in the one system, you do not see a much difference here. But when we are making use of a decentralized or maybe a kind of another systems, then in that case, it gives you like whenever we click on this and when we click on the remote logon, it allows you to sign in into the target system. That is the significance of this. Okay. So this is how we try to set up the RFC connection. But where did we define this EWM system? If you can remember this, name logical system. Here, EWM CLNT 400. So this is a client name that you have defined it for your EWM systems. And this is for your ERP system. So there are two systems that we always need to integrate, though it is a part of an S4. Please remember that. Yeah, this is something as an RFC destination. Okay. Okay. Here, there is a significance for this particular node. What happens for this particular one is whenever we are trying to do an integration for the core interfaces, means for your master data kind of stuff, okay, then the data will run in the background without any user interaction. However, in some cases, like for example, if you want to do some kind of an availability check, or it may be necessary for the user to access data in the target systems using some kind of an synchronous remote function call. There are different cases available for the RFC destinations. So like for the availability check, like this is what it is. EAC, like availability check. Okay. And then you will have the RL. This is something full name, I'm not able, but DG for the debugging. Okay. And for the RQ. So these are all the certain cases that we need to apply it over here. If you can just click on this, yeah, RL display application log of the entire system and RQ, RFC monitoring, and display product master or the product version. So this is something when you would like to have the systems run in the background, then only we will try to make use of these things. Okay, that is what this assign RFC destinations to the different application cases. Okay, now once we have maintained this particular one, there is something called as an assign RFC destinations to the method and a BAPI calls. So where do we do that basically? Basically, that is a transaction which we would be maintaining it actually. That's a transaction of the BD97. This is what I was referring to here. Now, in this particular one, like we also need to remember few certain transactions, like SM59, okay, and the other one is BD97, and then we also need to remember certain transactions like BD64, which I'll tell you this, okay. So SM59 is a transaction where we have built the RFC connection to from ERP to EWM actually. This is what. So we have built the RFC connections from ERPs to the EWM system. And in this particular one, what are we trying to do in the BD97? Here, we are trying to have the RFC destinations for setting up the BAPI calls and the dialog methods. Okay, so what we try to do here, if you see that, if you just expand it here, for this particular one, EWM CLNT 400, we do have the standard destinations for the BAPI calls and even for the dialog one. I don't know why the dialog one is missing here. 1 second. I'm not sure I do have this access or not. Oh, that needs to be maintained for the client. 1 second. Yeah. So I think this is missing for them. So I've just maintained it. Okay. So normally what happens here is we always need to maintain in this particular one two things for our ERP to the EWM, standard RFC destination for the BAPI calls and the standard RFC destination for the dialog calls. Means this will deal with assigning the RFC destinations. However, to assign these BAPI destinations to the logical systems in the ERP system, we are entering, this is what we have, which is of the BD97. Come on. What's this? My transactions are not opening. Yeah, here, if you can see the BD97. So this is something where we will click on the standard destination, BAPI destination, and then we will assign the EWM one the same way I have did it for the dialog one. Okay, this is what something which we have seen it. Okay, so in this particular transaction, what's happening? Yeah, what we try to perform here, we try to build the BAPI and as well as the other one, which is of the dialogue. So these are the some things where we have to build it in the system. Now, after once we have these particular settings in place, okay, then there are chances like somewhere around like 80% of the chances that all the configurations, I mean like the QRFC settings and as well as the other settings has been maintained. Okay. However, this BD64 is something where I'll tell it in the later part because this is something where we have to assign our integration, I mean like the model. That is something which I'll tell you. I'll park it maybe for now. I'll come back to that. Once we have done with the above settings, whatever we have discussed, like naming the logical systems and assigning the clients to the logical systems and specifying the APO releases and building the RFC connections and build the BAPI methods, I mean like maintaining the BAPIs and as well as the dialogues, all these things if you have done like pretty much like 70% we have configured the connections, I mean like the connections between the ERP system and your EWM system. Now what is the other ones which we are trying to see now here? Till now we have defined only the remote function calls and other things. However, now in order to have a certain specific QRFC settings, okay, this particular QRFC settings, whatever we need to maintain, okay, we need to have a certain transactions here, which I'll tell you that is something called as SMQR, okay, and there is also something called as SMQS, okay, and then we also need to have something called as SMQE, okay, SMQE, okay, and then we also have other settings like BD64. Okay, I'll just repeat this one also. Okay, so I'll try to rename each and everything. What is the significance of this? Now, in the SMQR, what we try to do, we try to maintain the QRFC monitoring settings. Okay, for your QIN scheduler. So there, I'll explain you what is that. And the same way, when we are talking about for the SMQS, okay, we will maintain this QRFC settings for Q out, okay. Oh, what happened? And this particular SMQV, whatever we are trying to have it, this is mainly the QRFC configuration settings again, like the Q settings actually. This is the earlier one we have seen the RFC settings, and here we are talking about the queued remote function call. Okay, so this is something a bit differentiated. Okay, now I'll explain that now. So this QRFC administration settings that we will have to look after. However, the BD64 at the last I'll cover. So pretty much these are something which we have to keep it in mind, which we have to be performed with the basis. But however, being a part of a functional consultant, we should be aware of the basic things that should be available. Okay, that is something where you need to understand. Now, the very first thing SMQR. So normally what exactly we are trying to understand in these particular settings. So when the data, like whether it could be your master data or whether it could be your transactional data, transfers from one logical system to another logical systems, okay, the messages, whatever has been sent, it will be always, remember this, it will be the data records. We will call it as an LUW, okay, or the inbound QRFC settings are received from the EWM system basically, okay, that they are automatically will be returned to your inbound to your ERP system. So what happens here, ERP systems normally, I mean, like we talking about one from the ERP, another one from the EWM, right? So whenever we are transferring this data either from your ERP or either from the EWM system, this QRFC1 means which are the Q settings, whatever we are discussing here, these entries will fall under into these transactions like SMQR or SMQS or SMQE or whatever it is. So now, if I try to go for one of the transaction, see for example, SMQR, one of the transaction here. Okay, now you see this here. There is certain things that was mentioned. For example, like you see DLV star or DLW star or EWM, MMPR, PR star, WM star means each and everything means the queue name here. For example, if you're trying to send some EWM inbound delivery or from your ERP inbound delivery, so here the queue name starts with the DLV star, okay, will come here, and the mode whatever we are trying to do here, you see this D, And again, we will also have a B for the batch job process. That's a different story. And a maximum runtime. This refers to the maximum runtime of your Quinn scheduler, whatever we are trying. This is a queue inbound, and we also have a queue outbound. Okay. And for that, this uses for the activating the destination. Default value will be always 30, guys. Okay. And the attempts, number of operations that it is trying to process that particular data. Means each and every delivery, if you want to specify a separate queue, for example, okay, you see in this particular delivery how many queues got stuck, because they're not monitoring it indeed, like 17 320 because of some issue an exception was raised. I don't know what is the reason behind it. So that is how, if you see DLVES CLNT 400, some delivery starting with 8216, that's how you would be identifying your transactional data when it is transferring from one system to another system. Like for the DLV star, we don't have anything. Oh, we do have, yeah, DLV also. Yeah, you see that. So posting period. So every time any kind of a data, if it is getting failed back, and this queue monitoring in the real time, it's really a very big job, because they have to keep on monitor this in order to have the business to run in a smooth way. Because if you're posting something in your EWM and that needs to get updated back to your ERP system, so how does that is going to happen? So that is where we are trying to have these deliveries and the queues and everything. Okay, make sure that R stands for the registration, means we have registered these queues. Okay, and you have this one, you see this stands for this is not registered, and it will not process anything. Okay, and we will also have another thing N, but I don't see that here. However, so SMQR, this is what we are discussing here. Okay, the first one for the Q, and the same way the other transaction SMQS, this is the outbound one, as I said. Okay, so in this particular one, we will try to have any kind of an outbound transactions that we need to monitor it over here. I mean, like we have to activate it and other stuff. The same way, we also maintain another transaction for that, which we call it as an SMQE. Yes, you see this. So these are all the programs for the EWM or for the deliveries or whatever it is. That this is strange. It should never be like this. Okay. All right, but however, when we are trying to define this, basically we have to make sure that, for example, if you go to this DLV star and if you click on this event registration, we would be giving the standard function module and the standard one. Okay, if you want, you can put your custom ones, but that's a separate story. But the standard one we will try to integrate. So all these things, whatever we are discussing over here currently, these are all the pretty much the standard methods and the standard settings that we need to make sure that has to be done. Once these settings are done, then only our EWM to our ERP system will be integrated in the proper way. You're getting my point, everyone? Hello? Oops. What's this? Hello, am I there? Or
Yes, Sri, we are able to hear you.
all right. So this is how we will try to create, or we will try to integrate. Okay, our particular, one second. I'll try to also open that document which I have discussed with you. So now, once we have this data from the basis activity and other stuff that we have set it up over here, then we are good to go with the connection between the systems. Now, when we are good to go, then how does the systems would be integrated? Okay, that is something which I'll try to put it up here. Means we need to have a certain organizational structures, like what? From the ERP standpoint, we would like to maintain some certain organizational structure. Okay, like what kind of an organizational structure was that? We would be requiring certain things like what, like a company, and then we would be requiring your company codes for that to define in the system. And under that, we would be maintaining something like a plant. Then we would be having your storage locations. Then we would be requiring your shipping points. And then we would require your warehouse. And then that's how we will be integrating it. Now, in order to define this, yes, we would be this is a basic thing pretty much, like we would be defining a company codes, plant, or your storage locations, and the shipping points and the warehouse. Now, this particular BD64 would come into the picture when we are defining your integration model. That is something, some sorry, your distribution model. I'm just miss. So this is something which distribution model, and this distribution model will come in place once we have defined this entire organizational structure. Okay, so probably I'll try to put this the organizational structure in the system for the time being. So this is the standard one. Like if you go to this enterprise structure here, okay, the definition, like you would be defining your own the business. For our practice purpose, you try to copy always the best practices, one like thousand or whatever it is. If not, you can also create your own stuff. Okay, that's a different thing. So the very first thing, like normally this is all will be taken care by your finance guys in the real time, but here because we are trying to do it, so that's how we will be maintaining all these things. Okay. Oh, 1200. Okay, that is no standard 1000 euro. Okay, not a problem. I'll just try to make use of so maybe I'll put it as some kind of an system is a bit slow, guys. Okay. Where is this one? Come on. Oh, what's going on? Oh, okay. This is not that fast as I expected. I'm just defining one company codes. Okay. Okay. So this is my company, which I've defined for myself. So now we will try to make use entirely this particular one. Okay. 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 Now we will try to copy it from the standard one, like whatever we have defined it. For example, I don't know, like we have seen something like 1200 or something. Okay. So the standard, all the tables, whatever has been uh, applicable to the standard one, that all the things will be getting copied to our custom one, whatever we are creating it. Okay. Now, come on. I'll take that later. Here, I'll be defining my client as well. Okay. All right. Okay, I've made use of some company. I'll just copy it to my this also. So normally this all that stuff will be taken care by your finance or maybe your procurement guys, the plan creations and other stuff, because normally warehouse people will never do this. Because it is an IDA systems, we are touching all these settings now actually from the scratch. Okay. We have defined the plant also by copying certain things. And yes, I also need to maintain some certain storage locations. Okay, there are certain ones, but however, I'll create my own stuff. Okay, like 1030, which is for the receive one doc. There is a significance for that. I'll give you an explanation after that. And then 1040, which I'll make it as an AFS, and 1050, which I'll make it for my production storage locations. Okay. So I have defined a certain storage locations for my business. However, I also need to maintain some purchasing organizations to have my procurement activities to be taken care. Okay. And in this particular one, yes. Now, this is a warehouse number where we are defining it from the ERP. This is our local warehouse management, not an EWM. But still, we would be requiring this. Okay. This is something where I will define it. Okay. There is a significance. Why do we require? I'll put that later. And I'll also create a shipping point. Okay. Okay, this is where we will maintain the standard one. So we have defined the basic stuff now, and we will try to assign it for our organizations indeed. Okay. So I'm assigning this company code to my this company as well. That is one thing. And then this is assigning the controlling area. I have to check that later. I'll check that. 1 second. What is the controlling? This is completely the finance and other stuff. Okay. Maybe for example, are they defining a custom ones or how they're doing it here? Maybe I'll have to check this part. Okay, I'll come back. Now I'll assign my plan to my company code. Okay, I think, yeah, this is the last thing that we would be maintaining it here. Okay, assigning the warehouse and this one. Now, ZWM1, 1030 is my storage location, and sorry, WM1, and here ZWM1, 1040, WM1. So these are my certain storage locations which we have created. However, now this locations has been assigned to our ERP warehouse number, not your EWM1. This is something which you have to remember. Now, what are we trying to do here indeed? Okay, the last one, assign shipping point to the client here. So here ZWM1 is my plant. Hmm. What's wrong? plant has not triggered here. What's the reason? Okay. Yeah. So we had this, then why this main point was not popping up? This is really strange. What's happening? Oh, mm, our plant was not popping up here. I don't know for what reason. Okay, I'll recheck this anyhow later time. But now, for the basis point of view, what is the next one? I'll just show you that. Okay, in this particular integration with your other SAP settings here, we have seen this one earlier, extended warehouse management, and here basic settings for the EWM linkage. And now here you see there is something called as a generate distribution model for your transactional data. Now, here there are two things we always need to understand that. Okay, as I said, this is the distribution model. Okay, means we would be always discussing on two models. Okay, one would be your integration model. Okay, and the second one would be the distribution model. So both the things are different here. Why? Because this integration model, whatever we are having it, it is mainly used for transferring your master data. Okay, all kind of a master data. But this distribution model is mainly used for transferring your transactional data. This is something which we have to understand. Means, as I said that in the early of this session, that we always discuss on two things, right? Like somewhere like master data and the other stuff. So the same, yeah, here, master data and transactional data. So this is what we always talking about here. So integration model is something where we will use your master data for purpose, and the distribution model is mainly used for your transactional data purpose. Now here, generate the distribution model. Okay. Oops. Here, if you see, there are warehouse number. Means what is this warehouse number? Now there is another thing which we also need to remember here. When we are integrating this, indeed, from S4 or maybe a decentralized one or any of the things, doesn't matter. Okay, we always need to remember that the EWM system, whatever has been created, I mean, like the EWM system. In the EWM system, we'll have an EWM warehouse number also, which is created, which we haven't done it. This warehouse number, whatever we have created, cannot be directly assigned to your ERP plans or maybe to your storage locations or maybe to your company codes, because warehouses generally will be not be assigned to company codes. It is normally at a plant and a storage location level. Okay, so we cannot assign the EWM warehouse number. So that is the reason what we are trying to do. We are trying to create a dummy warehouse number here. Okay, where in the ERP system, we will create a dummy warehouse number. That is something which we have created it as a WM1. And now we will inform to the system that this WM1 warehouse is no more in a normal ERP warehouse, which we are using a traditional WM1. It's not a normal ERP. This will behave as an EWM warehouse. So then what we try to do, we will link the dummy warehouse to our EWM warehouse. That is something which we haven't done it yet, but we'll be doing it. So that is why the reason we have to create an ERP warehouse number. Okay. Now, if you see this, how do we link that and how do we activate it? The very first thing, configure the EWM specific parameters. In this particular one, I have created a warehouse of WM1. Now, in this one, you see, as I said that, okay, local warehouse management means it is your standard ERP warehouse management solution. Decentralized WM in the sense, yes, it is also a standard warehouse management solution of the ERP, but in a decentralized system. Or it is an extended warehouse management solution, means this WM1 ERP warehouse, whatever we have created, it will be treated as an extended warehouse management solution. And the distribution mode here, if you see, there are two things, like distributed immediately at a document creation, means it could be your purchase of your inbound deliveries or your outbound deliveries or your process orders or any kind of a deliveries, that once it creates in the ERP system, that needs to transfer to your EWM system. That is what we have, this distribution immediately to the EWM. And there is something also called as a stop distribution. This feature will be applicable whenever we are upgrading your systems. Then that point of time you will be doing that. However, now distribution immediately. And here, once we click on this, this is one of the very big future, guys, the delivery change. Okay, just remember this. This is at a warehouse level. What is that delivery change refers to? So basically, what happens in this delivery changes, once we have any kind of a data, like for example, for any kind of an inbound, we will create a purchase order followed by an inbound delivery, and this inbound delivery will be distributed to the EWM systems. The same way, we'll have a sales order followed by your outbound delivery, and this outbound delivery will be distributed to the EWM. But once this data has been distributed to the EWM, the ERP deliveries like your inbound or maybe your outbound, we do not have the privilege of being changing any of the certain data there. Like it could be your quantity, or it could be your batches, or it could be your text items, or any of these things would not be possible in the earlier versions. But now, with this particular feature, okay, by flagging this delivery change, whatever we are doing it here, okay, this particular delivery change will enable this functionality of changing the quantities or the batches or anything. That is what the significance of this particular delivery change option here. Okay. Oops, what's happening? Then we can see this, the Q transfers, which we have discussed earlier. But however, now this is something where you need to understand. Generated distribution model means there is something where, okay, now my warehouse is ZW1. I'm sorry, my ERP1 is WM1, and the logical system of the EWM, it's one thing, which is of the EWM CLNT 400. This is the one, and the distribution model is EWM. This is a standard one, what we are trying to use it. Now here you see inbound, outbound, production, all, and create entries. So I'm selecting the all and I'm executing this icon. Then what happens here? What is a sender means from my ERP system, this is the sender of ESN CLNT 400, and the receiver is the EWM CLNT 400. I'm trying to replicate, I'm trying to create a certain master data, or maybe the basic things like the bus 2015, which is for the save replica, the delivery change. So these are the standard function things that we have to make sure. Like for example, if you go here, you see this, yeah, like AP outbound delivery. In this particular outbound delivery, we will have this delivery changes, request changes, saver means this is a kind of a function modules, or maybe the programs that which will help your data that are getting transferred from one system to the other systems, and vice versa, from EWM to ERP and from ERP to the EWM. So for that's the reason we have created your logical systems for both the things. You see ES1 CLNT and EWM CLNT, and then we have triggered, like, okay, when I'm using my outbound delivery, these are my certain programs that would be used and that would be applicable for transferring the data. For inbound delivery, this is the one, and for the manufacturing orders, like the process orders, so these are something where would be applicable for us. Okay, first thing. So this is how we will try to distribute. Okay, now coming back to my scenario, like the agenda for that. So here, this is all the entire settings that would be required for us to make the systems linked from ERP to the EWM systems, everyone. Okay, so I hope that was clear to everyone. Now, once we have maintained these settings, okay, we also have, okay, another one, like what, like if you can see this, in this particular one, we also need to define the same way of settings. However, this is something where we have to define our organizational structure and the other stuff in the in the EWM system. Okay. And here you also see that enable decentralized. That is something which I'll explain at later point. Now, this is how we will try to integrate between both the systems. Okay. Pretty much we have seen like the landscape, like what kind of a landscapes that we would be building up, like whether it could be an embedded or maybe a decentralized one. That is something which we have seen. And once we within the embedded landscape, what kind of the futures that we are seeing it, and how exactly we were integrating from the ERP system to the EWM systems. Okay, and what are the required settings out of it. Okay, using this remote function call and the QRFC settings and the distribution models and everything. These are the basic things that would be required for us to set up the landscapes of your ERP to the EWM one. Okay. I'm sorry, there is someone. Okay, so any questions or anything, maybe you can just put it me. I can answer that, everyone. Maybe I'll try to, I'm not sure how to unmute all. You can type your questions also. That is something where you can do that. Hello. Okay, can you please show the EWM CLNT 400 system? So we don't have, okay, to, to your question, where is this gone? You're talking about this one, something. This is what our EWM system refers to. Okay. All right. Okay, I'll explain the EWM specific parameters again. Not a problem. Does embedded EWM or decentralized EWM part of S4 as given part of the S4 license or needs need to? No. Decentralized EWM will be a different thing again. That's something which we need to take care as a licensing one. Okay. Okay, EWM specific parameters, I'll assign, I'll try to put that. Now, God. Yeah. So this parameters, whatever we are seeing here, yes, we see how do you want to make this particular EWM system? I mean, like the local warehouse management system, how do you want to maintain it? Like if you see here, we had something, okay, like there are multiple options, local warehouse management, decentralized warehouse management, or an extended warehouse management. Means out of all these three things, which one you're trying to make use of it? Like local warehouse management in the sense, that's your standard warehouse management solution, which we already using it from the old ones, like the local SAP WM one. So if you're trying to use it, then you do not need to do anything. Decentralized warehouse management is also a kind of a warehouse management solution only, but that would be a separate in a separate instance. However, we are using it for the extended warehouse management, so that's the reason we are trying to put it here. Okay, this is one thing. And the distribution mode, as I said, any of the deliveries that you would like to transfer it, that is where this distribution will come into the picture. Okay, distribute immediately at the document creation, as I said. Now, Yeah, there is something called as an unchecked deliveries, and the batch determination needs to happen. And goods is this is something where I'll try to explain you at the time of your scenario one. And the communication here. Now you see this here, queued and serialized RFC. This is only the communication we used to have. Earlier we used to also have something called as a TRFCs and other stuff, but now that is no more available. And the delivery change, and this is a serial number. So delivery change functionality, I've explained you that, okay, when you want to do any kind of a changes in your ERP deliveries, that is where this feature would be enabled. Okay, everyone. I hope that's clear now. All right. So any other questions or anything? Yes, Mother. Okay. What is the difference between a BAPI call and a dialog call? Yeah, that's between a kind of a technical stuff actually. So a BAPI and a dialog both are two different things, like which will be used for your transactional ones. That would be required for us. Okay. So yeah, is decentral WM system going to be discontinued along with ECC 6.0? I know because now this was been renamed as a stockroom management for the lean warehouses. So probably it would be still available. Okay, that's again part of the SAP one. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Anyone? So I hope is that clear?
Shri, there is
Okay.
some questions in
So
the
I
chat. Uh,
think
there are some questions in the chat box also.
I was just looking to ask questions only. So everything I think I've answered that. So does EWM or decentralized EWM part of? Yes, it is a part, but it comes under the licensing one. That's a bit a different one again. So when you're talking about a basic licensing, then it differs. And when we are talking about an advanced licensing, then it is a different story. So altogether, we do have two different things, okay, as part of the licensing one. So any other questions? Any other, if I missed out, because I see that I've opened. Uh, no. So that's it. I think we have from the questions point of view, or anything, anyone else would like to share the questions. I don't see anyone. Okay, probably. I think one more question I can see that. APO integration, it's not even required because APO integration is no more actually now. Now everything we are moving into the IBP one. So APO integration with EWM is very lean. Yes, in case if you want to have some kind of a futuristic dates or something, then that's where we'll be doing it. Or if not, we would not do that actually. Because APO in the sense like we would be using if it is an SEM box, yes, we have APO, EWM, TM, other scenarios. But APO now it is not there actually indeed. Okay. So is a decentralized settings if the decentralized is in non-SAP system? Yes. If that's the case, then the settings would be through the IDOCs, not through your QRFC or the RFC settings that whatever I've said now. Okay. It is completely through your IDOC settings. That's a different altogether because we are not talking about the non-SAP systems here because we are only talking about two SAP systems. That's the reason we would be going ahead with that. Okay. Uh, can we EWM integration in both standalone and legacy with standalone? Yes, we can do that. Configuration wise, we do not have any strange settings. It's pretty much the same way. Okay. Okay. I think that's the questions I see that here so far. That's it. I don't have any other questions then. I can see here. Any other things if you can drop me out? Yep.
I think pretty much all have been answered.
Yeah. All right then. So, yep, that is how the basic introduction of the landscape settings and whatever. And tomorrow, once we come back, I'll try to recap the same things in a different way because I'll try to show you the standard document what I was referring to there. And then I'll also try to refer you to the same things, the same notepad, whatever it is. I'll share this notepad in the Google Drive, the folder what we had everywhere. And that's how it would be communicated to each and everyone. Okay. And that's not the question, I guess. Yeah, nothing else. Yeah.